Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns. Hello, and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton with episode number 140. This is the last episode of 2022. Don't worry, there will be episodes in 2023. It's just literally the end of the year. So we're going to dive into, you might expect that this episode would be about New Year's resolutions, but it's not. It's about something far better. Okay, so what's better than a resolution? Well, what is a resolution? You know, people make these every year, right? They're like, I'm going to do this next year. I'm going to do that next year. Next year, I'll do all these things. I resolve no longer to eat candy or to drink a green juice every day, walk 4 miles, and be nice to my mother-in-law, right? We have these resolutions, and they don't really work for the most part. Like a broken clock is right every once in a while, but generally the habit or practice of making New Year's resolutions is a pretty not useful one for most people. But you know what is useful is a year review and goal setting. Talked about this a little bit last year. Talk about it again this year, because this is, I think, a really crucial point to making sure your life goes well. Just like, at a job, you might have a job and there's a review. Now, often your boss doesn't know what they're doing, so your job review might not be especially helpful, but that doesn't mean the concept of the review is not helpful. It just matters who is running your review. And since you are running your review, it's going to be amazing because you have the power to make it so. So the first part of this year in review and goal setting, well, first of all, I would like to say, set aside the time to do this right. Give yourself like 2 hours, nice cup of tea, quiet space. If you have children that are driving you crazy, go to a cafe, get away from the people who are going to be pulling on your attention, or do it at a time they're sleeping, and just claim that time and space to do this process. It will help you get a lot of clarity, because the problem I see a lot of people run into is that they spin their wheels all year. They decide they're going to do something all year. At the beginning of the year, maybe they just make a decision, or sometime during the year. And then by the end of the year, they haven't really made progress, but they've done various actions that allow them to fool themselves into thinking progress was made, or for them to acknowledge that progress wasn't made and then decide that they're, a POS. I won't say what that is, but a piece of something, because they couldn't do it. And instead of saying like, okay, was my plan sound? So let's get into how we put this plan together. The first thing you're going to want to do is get out like a calendar from the previous year so that you can have some grounding in reality. I think that's just something you'll want to have access to. Like the calendar on your phone is fine. You'll also want to have access to some paper, something to write on. I find this is better to do longhand, by hand rather than on a computer. But if you love to do things in spreadsheets and on computers, start there. I usually transfer it into something like that afterwards. I think a little bit better when my hands are moving. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is just start brainstorming. Like if you had a plan last year, what was that plan? Did you say, well, in January, my plan was that by the end of the year, I was going to have lost 40 pounds. I was going to walk every day. Like, what are all the things? What are all the promises or thoughts you had about what you were going to do this year? Like, what were all those things? All those little individual or group decisions you made about things that were going to happen this year. And I'm not doing this to make you feel bad, because obviously some of you will be like, I did none of those things. But we're going to start getting a little more realistic and grounded, because sometimes we make ourselves a bunch of promises that if we really drilled down, we didn't really have a lot of faith we would follow through on. But in the heat of the moment, We said we'd do something, right? I understand how passion works. In that moment, you're like worked up, you're like in it, you're like, I am going to do this thing. And like the next day, you're like, I don't know that I want to do the thing. So just get it all out there, all of the promises you made. Now, it might be a little too large to do everything. So let me explain what I meant by that. I'm here specifically talking about a year in review of your health, fitness, and possibly weight journey. You also might do a year in review about your job. You might do a year in review about your relationship, your family relationship, your money, right? There are many areas. But because this podcast is mostly about your health and fitness, we're going to be focusing on that area. It might be a little overwhelming if you try to take on all the areas all at once, so break them up into parts. So once you know what all of your health and fitness and possibly weight goals were for the year, then I would evaluate, how did each one of those promises go? I said that I would lose 40 pounds. I have gained 7. Okay, so that's how that went. And try not to be judgy in this place, just very factual. I did not achieve that goal, and this is what happened instead. And then sit for a minute with those things and say, okay, was this a problem with my plan? Like, was my original goal inappropriate for me? Or was it potentially unrealistic? Or was my goal fine? But then I did not make the plan or do the follow through to make it actually happen. So this step is like, where is the breakdown occurring? Where did I go off the track here? Like, did I not even get to the train station to start with to get on the train, or did we derail somewhere along? Like, what went wrong? And then you can take this sort of goal and what happened and look at, okay, well, starting from where I am right now with an awareness of the things I did not do last year. And I'm not saying that to say you can't achieve things. I am saying you did not achieve the things. Now, maybe you're like, I did everything I promised myself last year. Like, I way under ordered. I didn't put in a big enough order. I could have done more. Well, you want to be aware of that too. So you want to be aware if you overextended or underextended, and what's more appropriate for you for the coming year. Where are you going to feel challenged but not overwhelmed? And so now I want you to set new goals for 2023. That might be, by year's end, I would like to have lost 20 pounds. I would like to have started a weight training regime that makes sense for me. So what are the things that you want? What are the outcomes that you want? Maybe you have a weight training practice and you're like, I want to get to X pounds on this lift, right? What is the progress you want to make from where you are now? These are made up numbers. Maybe, I can deadlift 150 pounds and I want to deadlift 200. Whatever is an appropriate amount of progress, make sure you know the answer, or else then we're back in the beginning, right? Where you're like, I made a goal that was not possible because no one can add X amount to their lift in a year. So make sure you're coming from a place of knowledge. So what would you like to see accomplished? What are your goals for 2023? And now you're going to need a plan to execute those goals. You're going to need to know, okay, to achieve 20 pounds of weight loss, how am I planning on laying that out? Am I doing it in short, intense periods with longer breaks? Am I doing it in longer periods with shorter breaks? Like, how am I breaking that up? Am I planning on being in a very subtle deficit or a more aggressive one? How does that look, knowing what I know about myself? If your goal is to start a regular workout practice, how many days a week is reasonable for you to go to the gym? Or if you're going to work out at home, what is a reasonable? And now reasonable is a word I would like to emphasize, because it is better to be reasonable from the start. I'll give you an example. When I started going to the gym regularly this year, a little bit last year, but basically this year, I really got into it like week 1 and I was like, I want to be here like 4 or 5 days a week. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to just do this. And then I like stepped back and I said, I don't think I can commit to that. I can always let myself come to the gym an extra day or 2 if I want to, but what am I going to commit to? And I committed to 3 days, which was plenty. All studies point to the fact that a beginner working out 3 days a week is good, is plenty. There's not great additional returns if I had worked out more. This is different if you're an advanced lifter. So there was nothing that was driving me to do more. And I knew that I could stick to that promise. If if I go to the gym every single day, I'm more likely to go than if I am going every other day, in which case I will turn that into more days off, right? Like just knowing who you are, even if that means you like go to the gym and just sit in the sauna 2 days a week or something. If you it's on your schedule every single day, like knowing yourself, what is reasonable. So lay out how that's going to look for the next year. So the areas you're going to want to touch on: nutrition. What are your food rules for the year in general? This is just the way that you eat, right? And this has already probably been established, but if not, then what are your new food rules? What are you going to create around how you're going to eat this year? And that's just how you eat in general, right? So that might look like I'm going to do keto. I'm going to get this much protein. I'm going to do low carb. I'm going to do, whatever that eating style is. I'm going to not include junk food. I'm going to include a small amount of junk food. Like, what is the overall picture of what your eating looks like? Then you're going to go to, am I trying to lose weight? Like, is one of my goals weight loss or weight gain? Okay, so how am I going to lay that out for the year? This is part of why you want a calendar, right? So that you can say, okay, maybe from January, February, March, I'm going to be in a deficit of X percent, and I'm going to aim to lose X pounds, and then I'm going to take a break of X number of months, then I'm going to go back, do it again, and you're going to kind of block that out on the calendar, how that's going to look. And then now you've got, okay, nutrition. I know what types of foods I'm eating, what my food rules are. I know what my times of maintenance and deficit, or all maintenance, because I'm not planning on being in deficit, or surplus if you're trying to gain weight, look like. How does that lay out for the year? Okay, what are my resistance training plans for the year? What are my cardiovascular training plans for the year? What are my movement plans for the year? What are the commitments that I want to make for the year to myself for my health journey? And once you've got all those notes taken, then I would create a document. You could do this in your computer, or you could do this on paper, however you like, that summarizes all of these things. So my 2023 health and fitness plan, and then block it out. Nutritionally, I will be blah, blah, blah. Resistance training wise, I will be blah. So what are those things? What does it look like? What are the commitments you're making? Make them as if you're making yourself a contract, so that you know what commitments you're going to uphold. And again, this is where it really matters. Keeping the promises that you make yourself matter the most. And so you're making these promises to yourself. So make sure you want to be making a promise about these things. Do not feel forced, even by yourself, to promise things that are more aspirational than realistic. Make sure that you're being not discouraged, right? Don't be like, oh, I never do any, can't accomplish anything. Don't come from that place. But you want to make sure that this is a game you can win, that you're setting yourself up to win, not setting yourself up to fail. You can absolutely do it. If you need help along the way, starting mid-January, my program Keto Unstuck is starting a new round, and we're doing something different this year. We're doing 2 different options because some people, they get the right information and they're off to the races. And so there is an option. It's sort of a self-study option. It is less expensive. I also feel like people's budgets are a little tight these days. So there is that option. There's as well more of a handheld kind of option where you get more one-on-one attention and coaching. So if you're interested in that and finding more out about it, there will be links in the show description. So check that out if you're listening to this as 2023 starts or as 2022 rounds up and we haven't yet started, still time to jump in. So make sure you check that out, because 2023 is going to be an amazing year for you. Whether you do the program, you don't do the program, make sure you do this year in review and your goal setting for next year, and then make the plans and then follow through on the plans. And you can't lose if you do those things. So I'm wishing you a very happy new year if you're listening to this right when it comes out, or I hope you have had a happy new year if you listen to this a few days late. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.